invisible owners create invisible companies.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry's seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hersh Rephun.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
Today's conversation on the Yes Brand Podcast is for the listener who's very good at what they do, but somehow still not really being seen for it. Jimi Gibson, my guest today, has spent decades on both sides of that line. From performing at the MGM Grand as a magician to now leading brand communication and building a body of work around visibility, he's lived the gap between being great and being known. His thesis is simple on the surface. Invisible owners create invisible companies. But what really caught my attention is what's underneath that. There's a tension right now. Building authority around visibility without becoming someone who just talks about it. So this isn't a conversation about tactics. It's about what happens when the work is real, but the way that it's being understood isn't. Jimi, glad you're here with me today.
Hersh, I'm excited. This should be an interesting journey through this ever-changing world of personal branding and visibility and all of those things that can get a little confusing.
Yeah. And my first question would be, when let's start with your work. When someone first comes across your work, what do they assume you are, and what might they miss that you actually care about them knowing?
Yeah, and I would say if you ask that question today, it's a lot different than if you asked that question 12 to 18 months ago, because I decided a couple of things that happened. Maybe we'll get into that. As these AI systems are sort of trying to figure out who you are. So my first name is Jimi, Jimi, spelled a little bit differently, and my last name is Gibson. So initially, when somebody searched, they might get Jimi Hendrix or Gibson guitars or Gibson refrigerators. And so you got to be coherent and you got to be clear. And so if someone were to look at my profile now on any platform, whether it be Google or one of these large language models, they're going to see that I talk about owner visibility, because it was a purposeful decision that I made, and it's structured in a way for whatever system is looking is going to find some indications that that's what I talk about on a regular basis. It's also going to find that I have a history as a magician. I had to make a decision. Did I want that to be included or not? I think it's an interesting conversation starter. And so I decided, yeah, I kind of like that part of it. And then it may get into my location. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, which is on
beautiful city. Yeah.
Beautiful city. Yep. On the East Coast. And I sort of have a Southern accent, and I wanted that to be part of it. And I might talk a little bit slower, and I might think about things a little bit differently. And I love shrimp and grits. And so all of these things are, if you look at a system who's trying to figure out who you are, it is looking for pattern recognition, right? And so when something falls out of the pattern of the training model or the current search that it's doing, then that's actually a good thing. And so maybe we'll get into that and how you can structure what you want to be known for. What is it telling about me that I wish, or not telling about me that I wish it would tell about me? Well, as I look at some of the other folks in this arena who've probably been talking about it a little bit longer, um, I wish that it would say that I don't have an agenda. I just want people to understand that there's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there. And what I'm saying is based on, some study that I did over 400 businesses and the work that I've done myself. And yeah, it's going to change. Uh, if we had this chat next month, there would be things that have shifted and changed. But yeah, I would like to be a little better known for being a voice that provides value to business owners to help sort all this out, because it is really confusing. And there are a lot of people out there with an agenda who want you to buy something associated with helping them get to somewhere that may or may not work for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting kind of notes in there. One is about your background in magic. Um, this is something that comes up a lot. We are multifaceted. We as human beings, we are not meant to be. Some people will be on LinkedIn and they'll have an embarrassment of riches there, and it'll be very confusing because they'll have so many things going on.
Mm-hmm.
But it isn't that those things shouldn't be included. It's where do they belong and how close to the front line exposure should they be? And can they form a holistic whole, a holistic view of somebody so that people can get the right impression and not just pick and choose what they want to see. You know, um, Someone could say, "Well, I don't want to include my magic background because it's going to be distracting. They're going to think I don't personally put a lot of emphasis on my stand-up comedy background,
Mm.
but it's there in such a way that people will know about it because I know that it's of value to people. I know they respect it, they admire it, they find it fascinating. Um, but it isn't a part of my work that I do. It's not incorporated. Oh, we're going to draw on stand up, and this is going to be
Mm.
a part of the program or the work that I do or that stuff. This is the piece that caught my eye. People see me as the AI visibility guy, the data guy, the invisible owners create invisible companies guy, and that's accurate, but it's incomplete. The research is a tool. You said the real thing that you care about is the person behind the business who was designed with something nobody else has, which is what we were just talking about, and
Yeah.
is wasting it by staying hidden. That's
Yeah.
a conviction I've carried, you say, since I was 6 years old, pressing my thumb into an ink pad at a bank. The frictions that the data gets the attention and the deeper message gets overlooked. So I'm still figuring out how to lead with the conviction without losing the credibility the research provides.
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned pressing a thumb into an ink
Your
pad when
thumb,
I
yeah.
was 6 years old. And so let's start there. And then I think that carries through to the permission that I would like to give business owners, founders, CEOs, executives, whoever the case may be, subject matter experts at an organization. So, my parents were very active in our childhood and wanted to instill in us, behaviors that we would carry through into our adulthood. So, mom took me to the bank when I was 6 years old to open up a savings account. And so we walk in, and the woman smiles and calls me over to a table and has this ink pad and some supplies with her, and she says, press your thumb into this ink pad and then press it onto this piece of paper. And I said, oh, okay, what is this? And she says, well, that's your passbook that will know who you are when you come into the bank. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm thinking like a 6-year-old, ooh, this is high tech, like thumbprints.
Mhm.
And then she says, and she gives me a pen and she says, now use that thumbprint as like the body and draw a character uh, that represents like something you like or something you want to be when you grow up or whatever the case is. And she points to this poster behind her. And so, unbeknownst to me, and probably why my mom had taken me there, is they were running a newspaper campaign for the thumb body, I'm Thumbody. And so
Oh, I
it was
love
sort
that.
of a
Yeah.
play on the thumbprint, and it was talking about how, every kid needs to feel important. And one of it is having a bank account. And so on this poster, there were like little thumbprints, and there were like doctors and, firemen and ballerinas and policemen and, a little thumbprint carrying a briefcase. And I'm sort of on the spot, right? In the spotlight. And I go, well, I don't think any of them are the one that I want to do. And so I just took the pen and I drew a little top hat and I drew a little hand holding a magic wand and I drew these really cool shoes. And I'm like, I want to be a magician. And so as soon as I drew it, I had like this burst of, was that the right thing? And I look up at the woman sitting at the table and she goes, wow, that's fantastic. I don't think we've had anybody draw a magician. And so then I look at my mom and I'm like, oh no, what's mom going to think? And she's like, that's great. And so, like, in that split second, I was like, oh, well, it's okay to be who I want to be.
Yeah.
And so I always thought about that. And I don't know, I was at a bookstore or something and I saw a book on a shelf and it had a thumbprint on it. And all of a sudden, those memories just kept flooding back to me. And I was like, what in the world happened to that campaign? So I went to the US Patent and Trademark Office and I looked, and that trademark had been abandoned. And so I actually filed and got that trademark. And so now I own the thumb body trademark that I experienced as a little kid. And
Oh, wow.
so, yeah, kind of cool. And so I think we get into this mode, and it happens over time, where we think we have to fit into what everybody else thinks we should be. We think we have the voice, we have to have the same voice as everybody else. And those little quirks that actually make us very interesting, we sort of push them aside and we discount them. And, if we have a passion for something, maybe nobody else is going to think it's cool. And so all of a sudden, with the convergence of AI, and I talked about pattern recognition, so about every 3 to 6 months, every one of these large language models invest a huge amount of money and they update their training data, right? And so they just
Mhm.
scour the internet for all the books, all the businesses, all the papers that have been written, all the blogs, everything. And they sort of, I call it the pizzeria effect, because it's like you're making the dough for a pizza. And so they take this dough that they've made and they wrap it up and put it in the freezer. And you can't get in that training data after the fact. Like, you have to wait till the next go round, right? And so ChatGPT has theirs and Claude has theirs, and they're all have different dates at which that training data exists. Well, if you don't belong to that training data, it's not a total loss, because that pizza needs toppings, right? And so when somebody types in, best plumber in Charleston, South Carolina, it's going to look through its training data and go, okay, let me pull out this dough. And it's either going to be non-existent with no crust, it's going to be a really thin crust, or it's going to have like a deep dish crust to it, right? And then it starts to put these toppings on. And so that's the current retrieval of information, which it's pulling from some places that we might get into today. And it puts toppings on those pizzas. And so, depending on where you are and what you're doing, number one, it's either going to make a bad pizza that's not you, and it's going to make somebody else's pizza because it's confused you with somebody else, right? I
Right.
talked about me, Jimi Hendrix, Gibson guitars, or it's going to know exactly who you are and make a really good pizza. And so that's what happens every single time. But through this training data, it's kind of getting a bulk of information. And if we, use that same thing related to a plumber, like, what are the top 10 plumbing issues that homeowners face, right? So if I want that to be a blog and I just tell ChatGPT or Claude or one of these other tools to write me an article, well, what's it going to do? It's going to pull the average of all of that stuff, and it's just going to give you something very generic, right?
Right.
But if it looks out and it says, okay, well, here's the regular stuff, but let me see if there's anybody interesting in Charleston, South Carolina, because we want this to be a pretty tasty pizza and we need some really cool different toppings. And all of a sudden it finds this plumber who's involved in the Chamber of Commerce and has a heart for some charity in the local the local area, and has a benefit every year for helping the homeless, or has written an article that has a new plumbing method that prevents pipes from getting clogged. So it's gathering all this stuff and it's going, oh, well, this plumber is not like all the other plumbers that are just average. This is going to be a really great looking pizza. And then all of a sudden, that particular business owner rises to the top, pardon the pun.
Yeah.
And AI actually likes people more than it likes logos, right? I mean, think about it. You go into a restaurant and you go, oh, I know the owner. Okay, great. Everybody wants to know the owner. Who's behind it? Why did they start it? What is their passion? Why are they in this location? And then they can attach that to the business. And so my passion is like, if you're just a thumbprint, you're just a smudge. Like, it's a unique thumbprint, but it doesn't look like much until you actually draw that character. And so what is that character you're going to draw? And what are you going to step out and be okay with being a little quirky and a little unique and being yourself? And that's actually going to benefit you more than trying to blend in and be like everybody else.
That's great. That's great, Jimmy, because I think that what we have today are a lot of smudges, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way.
Yeah.
What a lot of us fall into is making our imprint. I love the analogy, making our imprint, but it is distinctly ours, but will it help us rise to the top of the field that we're in? The days of, the CV, the resume, relying on that to somehow plug into an algorithm, or that's not what it is. And also, we shouldn't forget that, like you pointed out, AI loves people more than logos. It's hungry for information.
Mm-hmm.
It's hungry for direction. And, it goes way beyond reputation management and all those other things, which are very important. But if you think about what is someone's impression going to be, you only get one chance to make a first impression. Well, in reality, you can make a new first impression all the time on a 24/7, in today's world. But what I'm curious about your opinion on is what's happening in the marketplace out there when we're not consciously doing anything about our visibility or our image. What is happening out there? Because my sense is it's not just a blank slate. It's not just a void. We're out there. Our comings and goings and doings and accomplishments and failures, it's all out there. But what happens when we're kind of like, oh yeah, I don't do that. I am who I am. I'm not trying to create any kind of impression of myself.
Yeah. So I don't want this to be a downer, and I don't want this to be pessimistic. So we'll keep
it's okay.
it on
We'll
the
recover
optimistic
from
side, because I think there's a window of opportunity. And I'll put a little bit of backstory to it, and then we can break it apart. So about 2016, Google came up with an acronym EAT. They expanded that in the early 2020s to EEAT, and that stands for experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And so when Google is looking to put a result on the first page of Google, those 10 blue links, there's about 230 different parts of that algorithm that says these people get page one, categorization. It's looking for one or more of those four things because it wants to present the most reliable and the best option for the person who's searching for that. Well, these large language models picked up on that, and they're actually looking for the same thing. And they're not so much looking for what you write about yourself on your website, because anybody can say, I'm great, look at me. they're looking for third party validation. And um, if folks are not understanding where to be and what to say, they will literally be invisible in the coming years. Like they won't even be part of the conversation because Gartner's done a study this year. Organic search will drop 25%, and by 2028, it'll drop 50%. Um, we have a number of clients who are experiencing, traffic losses from organic search all the time. And so, where is all that traffic going? Well, right now on a Google results page, you have AI overviews, you have AI modes, you might have a little information snippet, you might have a knowledge panel. And so people are getting their information on that page. And now 60% of Google searches end without a click. So nobody's even going to a website, sort of, I'll do air quotes around that. They're using these other tools to talk through a product or service they may be interested in. They want to learn something. And so I decided, like, I'm going to study this, like what actually is happening. And so I took 400 businesses across 5 different verticals and tracked a bunch of stuff. I wanted to know how visible is the business to AI? How visible is the business owner to AI? What's happening to their traffic year over year from 2025 to 2026, January year over year? And I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, 46% of those 400 business owners were invisible to AI, like literally nothing. And so you're going to be not in the consideration set of who's around, like what somebody's looking for, right? And so you may think, well, okay, I can continue to hide if the business is visible, but I just gave you some stats that says organic search is down, these conversations are happening elsewhere, AI loves people more than it loves logos. There's actually a multiplier factor with that business owner or executive in that organization that will actually layer on top, and the visibility of that business owner will actually transfer at a higher rate to the business than the other direction. And so it used to be that, personal brand and visibility of a significant person within the organization was sort of it's nice to have, but it's sort of fluffy. I tracked revenue for 2 different size companies. Again, this is all over the United States. I didn't do it internationally. And it was millions of dollars in revenue gap over the next 3 years. So that's sort of the big picture, and we can dive into that. And I'm not talking about being a TikTok star. I'm not talking about being an influencer. These are minimal things that you can do that will make a huge impact. Why? Because nobody else is doing them.
Yeah.
The bar is extremely low.
This also hits on personality. So often we associate visibility with a desire for visibility.
Yep.
The fame bug, the person who wants to be, who's all out there, the full on extrovert. That's a different issue altogether. People, as you're pointing out, Jimmy, it behooves them to be intentional about their visibility.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with they want to be. I mean, it could, but it had nothing to do with, they are the expert in blank, or they're the leading. You get the most hits, when you search this or that. It really is a facet of their professional reputation and their standing in the marketplace. So they may not be in their own mind, a front office kind of, leader of people, and say, I have to be heard. I must be, I'm a thought leader and blah, blah, blah. But they have to give some conscious effort around how they are perceived, just the way people did in an analog age where they would just dress a certain way in the office, the people in the office would see them. The people in their space, in their four corners, in their world, in their family, in their community, those are the only people that would see them. But we're in a bigger space now, and the person in the building next door to us may learn a lot about us from from their proximity to us on the web versus the fact that they're actually next door you know
Yeah. So a couple of things that thank you for bringing those up. AI and the algorithms don't care how many followers you have. They don't care how many likes or shares or comments. It cares about the content and where that content resides. And so you can remove yourself from the pressure of like going viral. Um, what it's looking for is a number of coherent things that exist in a variety of places, and it's able to connect the dots and figure out who you are and what you can do for somebody, right? And so you don't have to be the leading expert, but we all have been in an environment, whether it's product or service related, and we may walk into a brick and mortar store and you may have a question about something. So, and this may date myself, but let's say you're looking for a stereo system for your home or a home entertainment system. And you walk into one of these showrooms and you say, oh, well, this is what I'm trying to do. And this is the side. Oh, let me go get Joe. Joe is the person who knows all about these things. You describe that to him and you will get the best answer. Okay. Now, is Joe the leading expert in the world? Probably not. But in this environment, he's the one that people are pointing at. Right. And
yeah
so we have to expand that. And you sort of use those exact words. And you have to be able to talk about that in public so that these AI models can know, oh, yeah, Joe's the expert. And there may be an article written about Joe. Joe might have been on a podcast. Joe may have his own blog. Joe may belong to the Home Entertainment System Association and spoke at an event. So there's all sorts of ways that this can happen, but it's really being that person. And so the other thing that's happening right now is the generalist is hard for AI to figure out. The specialist and the niche person who talks about a very specific thing can now be a global expert in something because you are willing to limit what you talk about it in a very specific and detailed way. And now you're going to stand out in the crowd. And
yeah
I think that's a scary place for people because everybody wants to be everything to everybody, but you end up being that training data that's just vanilla across the board. So
Well, people don't want to limit the in a crowded marketplace. The last thing people want to do is eliminate opportunity.
yep.
But it's you have to make a choice. Are you going to cast a net that is far and wide and hope that your strategies and your acumen are going to catch a bunch of fish that way, even if they're a bunch of different kinds of fish? Or are you going to lean into your very unique expertise and create, I like to just think of it as a category of one
Mm.
on some level, create a category of one where you are not even competing with anyone else. You are doing something so specific for which there's an audience, for which there's, the level of work that you want to do. It doesn't preclude you from doing things beyond that, but it actually ensures that you can rise to the top. You can rise to the top, and it's uh, to me, it feels like in a hyperactive information chain like the one we live in, there's a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of unimportant information that we can't really do anything about, you know? that could really confuse people and really make things uh, harder for everyone. And so I think in our little corner, we have to be as crisp and clear and also bold. I mean, where does boldness fit in your view?
Yeah, and that was one of the conversations we got into about um, did we see things eye to eye? Was you challenged me a lot to say, look, you got to have a point of view and you got to come on here and be able to defend it because
Right.
I'm not interested in having a wishy washy conversation. And so I think that's a scary place for people. Of course, on social media, we see the divisive nature of a lot of conversations, and that's not really the boldness that we're talking about.
Right.
I think the boldness that we're talking about is having an opinion because these AI models love it when you do, but they don't produce any, right? Because if you look at how, like a Chat GPT or a Claude or Gemini or Perplexity, it's basically a really bad mind reader because it is trying to figure out, based on statistical probability, what is the best answer it can give based on the structure of the question that it was given, right? And so it may throw in a hallucination here and there because it doesn't know. So it's going to make something up, or it's going to test you. So it helps its training data learn a better way to answer that in the future, but it doesn't know the scars that you went through to build your business. It
Yeah.
doesn't know the champagne toast. It doesn't know your passions and why you do what you do. It doesn't know the core values that, if you were going to die on this hill, this is the hill you would die on. It might be customer service. It might be speed of delivery. It may be the materials you use in the construction of, the product and whatever it is. And so being bold and having an opinion is really the differentiator and your magic sauce for being visible. Because what it's going to do is it's going to magnetize people to you who believe what you're saying is true. And it's going to repel the people who go, I don't believe that at all. Great. Well, you would have never been a customer anyway. And so I think the boldness comes from going, you know what? I'm going to be okay with putting it out there and potentially getting some criticism. But you know what? Somebody told me this a long time ago. If you don't make somebody mad, you really don't have an opinion on something. Right. And
Yeah.
again, there's a tactical way to do it. You don't have to be divisive. You don't have to be rude. You don't have to be disrespectful. But I think to have an opinion and stand behind that opinion is one of the strongest positioning things that you can do as a business and as an individual.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like that you said that because when I'm talking with people, um, as you know, when you're having a private conversation with someone, uh, they're more open because there's less exposure. It's not
Yeah.
being recorded necessarily. It's not being broadcast. You have their confidence and vice versa. And I have a lot of these conversations, and I will say to somebody, that none of this was visible in anything I researched about you or looked up about you. None of this stuff was there, and yet you're so passionate about it. And it doesn't have to be explosive, to your point. It's just that one opinion is going to make anyone who disagrees with that opinion disagree with it. And then how vehemently they agree and disagree is what the level of battle is that potentially happens. But the point was that if you could take that point of view and condense it or consolidate it into an image, into a persona, into a viewpoint that anyone who sees you can get. This is where this person stands on it. It could be anything, not being boring with your, it could be any kind of thing that pertains to your area of expertise. But you really get behind it. You narrow it down, get behind it, really put it out there. I defy anyone to say that they're going to get less attention, because of that. And I don't work in the amplification side. I work in the upstream kind of strategy side of all
Mm-hmm.
of this. What impact it's going to have is being determined, in my view, up here, and then the amplification makes it louder or interprets it for a certain audience or calibrates it further, but you're setting it up here. And I think that that's, again, the same thing that we both seem to agree, which is the specificity is almost the magic, the special sauce.
Yeah. I mean, you read it out in the intro that I have a thesis that invisible owners create invisible companies.
Yeah.
I spoke at an event last week in front of a room full of business owners who own restoration, water damage, and mold mitigation companies. And their natural tendency is to move backwards and let the logo speak. They don't want to be in these conversations. And so I gave a 40-minute presentation, and then we had Q&A, and the guy stands up, one gentleman there, and he says, look, I am very purposeful not to be on social media. I just canceled all of my social media accounts in the past month. So you're telling me that I need to resurrect those accounts and start doing the things that you just laid out? And I said, well, I'll ask the rest of the room. What do y'all think? And so there was a resounding murmur that came up that basically the data is there, and we can get into some of the dollar values associated with that. It's up to you. You can continue to do what you're doing. I'm just saying, I am presenting you something that you can do as you will. And if that's your comfort zone, then that's fine. But I'm telling you, over the next 3 years, here's what's going to happen with pretty good reliability because of the path that we're on. And so he says, dang it, I guess I'm getting those social media things back, and I'm going to do this. And so he had a conviction at that point that
Yeah.
his area of safety was to fade into the background. But then all of a sudden you saw his passion kick in. And I talked to him afterwards and I said, what are you passionate about? What do he gave me a whole list of things as to why he's in the business, how he has a heart for the people who have had damage to their homes. And I'm like, look, you just those could be little videos that would rocket ship you into visibility because nobody in your space is talking about this. Everybody's trying to hide. And so that was kind of a cool thing that I got to see happen live in action. And again, he could have easily have said, I'm not going to do this, and sat back down. So yeah, those are the decisions that people need to make. And they're not easy.
No. And as we kind of circle around and wrap this conversation up, share with the audience uh, a little inspiration that might help them in their journey as they build their brand, as they build their company, their practice, um, and they're looking for something to help them stand out. They're looking for something to distinguish them. But what's the first step that they have to take to get that ball rolling?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of, I know we said this is not a technical conversation, but I think it's incumbent upon us to give some value here.
Yeah.
And I would say the first thing is look at your own website. And if you have an about section that's pretty thin, really think about telling that story of who you are and why you're in the particular business that you're in. If you have a blog on your website that has no author associated with it, put a byline or your name and your title associated with that blog article. If you have product or service pages on your website, restructure them so that the first thing, and it could be the headline, could be a question that you typically get from a customer. And then the first 80 words in that blog post or that service page or that product page answers that question. And then you can write as much as you want underneath that, because these AI models are looking to answer questions. You may have heard the term answer engine optimization. That's one of the things that you can do. The other thing that you can do is, if you have not touched your LinkedIn profile in years, go clean the cobwebs off, get it dusted off. That's the number 2 place that these AI models look. Now, it doesn't mean that people need to go onto your LinkedIn and read anything. It's going to pull that information and use that as part of your authority. Why? Because it knows who you are, what your resume is, what business you're connected to, who you're connected with, all those types of things, how many years you've been in this business. So go through that and post something. I know that can be scary, but the algorithm is not in your favor. Nobody's going to see it.
Yeah.
There's 1.3 billion people on LinkedIn. 2% of them post. Yeah. 90% lurk and 6% actually engage in some kind of conversation. So Search Engine Journal did a study back in November. An executive, if they post 10 times a year on LinkedIn, not a month, not a week, a year, their referral base will increase by 30% and their deal size will increase by 3.7 times. And so there's real dollars associated with being visible. And then the last one I would say is start a YouTube channel. I know that's scary. Go to YouTube and just type in how to start a YouTube channel. You can literally start one on your phone. If you don't want to talk into a camera, I know that's a pretty scary place to be. Get on a Zoom call with a colleague, with a friend, with somebody who can ask you questions, kind of like a little mini podcast, and, post that on YouTube. These AI models will actually scrape the transcript and talk about something educational, talk about your expertise, talk about why you started the business. And so I would say, if you can do all or most of those in the first 30 to 45 days, you're going to see yourself starting to shift when it comes to visibility related to AI.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. I'm glad we included these because it's simple yet intentional action. And to go back to, what I brought up earlier, if you're not taking action, the marketplace is doing it for you and making decisions about you or instead of you.
Yep.
But Jimi Gibson, so speaking of all of this, let the audience know where they can find you if they want to learn more.
Sure. Well, I practice what I preach. So I post on LinkedIn every day, Monday through Friday. There's a lot of tips on there. If you want to connect with me and DM me and I have a question about any of this, I'll actually answer your question. And then Thrive Internet Marketing Agency. We've been around for 20 years. A lot of resources on that site as well to learn more. That's thriveagency.com.
Thank you so much for joining us on Yes Brand today, Jimi. What a pleasure.
Yeah, it was fun, Hersh. Thank you.
All right.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, then
subscribe and leave a
yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes,